Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Litzar, happy to be your co-host, really, because we have uh, other experts here, Alki Thompson being one, and normally we have Vern Schillinger, but he is out of town today. So I did want to make a quick announcement that we're going to be changing the timing of HMM starting in February. This is brand new news. We're gonna switch to the first and third Fridays of the month, okay, instead of doing every single week. We've been having a much lighter crowd since post-COVID. And so this will give an opportunity for, I guess, maybe even more people to show up, kind of congregate. So first and third Fridays, but same Zoom place, location, bat time, bat place, everything else is going to stay the same. Okay. And so with that, we'll go ahead and start our open Q&A. Antonio's new with us and we are going to let him take the stage. What can we do for you, Antonio?
Hello, yeah. So I had a very general, simple question. What are your thoughts if the job posting you have you can only meet like 50% of the desired qualifications? A
Great.
lot a lot of experts say like you should go ahead and go for it. And then there's I don't know if you've even seen that meme about like someone now who's much less qualified than you has that job that you really want you that's really meaningful for you, but you didn't apply because you thought you weren't qualified enough for. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Great question. I'll start, and Alki, I definitely want your opinion too, because we're going to use our recruiter hat here, okay, when we give you this, and it'll be interesting to see how aligned Alki and I are in our responses. So, so let me give you. Oh, Keith, we want you to your screen share is kicked in here. Okay. And Keith, just so you know, that's happened before. So you don't want to hit your screen share button. That shows,
Okay.
yeah. You just hit your stop. It's should say your video button on the bottom left.
Yeah.
Just tap the video, start video, and hopefully that'll work. But anyway.
Yeah, it's not, but that's
Sorry.
okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Okay, no worries. So to answer your question from my perspective, so first of all, there absolutely is a difference in whether you apply to a job through a job board, like Indeed, Career Builder, LinkedIn's job board, or whether you are contacted some other way. So for example, if you get noticed through a referral, right? So a friend of yours refers you, a colleague, or a recruiter taps you directly, or an employer taps you directly, that's different. So I'm just going to address the job board. It's a very specific thing. And the reason is that when you apply through a job board, you are now Siri has decided to I don't know what I said that got Siri to pop up. They're always listening. So when you apply through a job board, you are competing with hundreds of other people, potentially. And on the recruiter side, we are inundated with hundreds of other people. So when an employer posts a job broadly, number one, they get a lot of volume, but number two, they're looking for what we call in the industry a purple squirrel or a unicorn candidate when the employer does that broadly. And so, first of all, you have to know that a lot of the applications that we receive on job boards are not qualified at all. Okay. Which makes it harder and harder for us to find the people that are. Right. That's first thing. Second thing is, as a result of all of that, we are really, really, really focused on what the employer told us that they wanted. We're looking for the perfect fit. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect fit, but we're looking for as close as possible. My rule of thumb, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this. Okay, this is not exact science. My rule of thumb is 80%. Okay, make sure that you're 80% on. And what do I mean by that? And first of all, here's what I don't mean by that. What I don't mean by that is when you look at the qualification section. The bottom half of the qualifications has all these lovely little soft skills. We want you to be a team player and organized and all that stuff. Not that. Those are soft skills. Those things are important in the interview. But when a recruiter is screening your resume without any referral, nobody's championed you. It's just a piece of paper, just that digital document, right? What they're looking for when they're looking for the fit, when I say 80%, I'm talking about functional skills and industry experience. Okay, now the functional skills, very, very important. So when they say, I'm making this up, they're saying they are looking for a customer success manager, right? And they want 5+ years of customer success management experience. And then they list these various hard skills around that. That's
Right.
what I'm talking about. So your ability to line up with the functional hard skills that they're looking for. Now, the industry experience, they'd really like that. They almost always want it. When they say it, they really want it. Even if they say preferred, we want financial services background, strongly preferred. They're really looking for that, meaning they are giving strong preference to the people who have those skills. Okay. So it's not to say you can't apply. It's a free country. Okay. But if you do apply and you're less than 80% on with the hard skills in the industry, you got to manage your expectations. Likely than not, you're not going to get selected because they're looking for the purple squirrel. Now, that said, if you believe that you are qualified, first of all, your resume has got to be customized. That's the other thing that we talk about on this call all the time. So you might have the skills, but unless the skills are like in neon lights, so to speak, they're not going to notice you. There are plenty of people who have the skills, but it's buried in their resume, or maybe the person, has the skill, but it's buried in one of their accomplishment stories. No, you've got to have keywords. You need to have a keyword skill section that speaks exactly to the keywords that are on that job description. And you want every accomplishment to be labeled with a key competency. So if it's customer success, right? It's bold, little label, and then you have your accomplishment story, or it's data analysis in bold, and then there's your accomplishment story. The point is that the employer can quickly screen down the page and see keyword, not a keyword that's buried in an accomplishment story. They won't see that. It's got to stand out and pop. And if you have the industry experience, the same thing. You could put your industry experience at the top. You can say, like I have a coaching client right now. We just did his resume. He's a marketing executive, but his specific industry is called fintech. Fintech is financial technology, like PayPal, that kind of thing. So we say fintech marketing communications executive. Okay. Right. So you can layer in that industry, throughout. But no matter what, you do all of this wonderful stuff. And even if you are 80% qualified, you still want to get an internal champion. So you still want to go ahead. I know this is a longer answer than what you're asking, but you still want to go ahead and find somebody internally that can champion you. So you in LinkedIn, you put in the name of the company in the upper left-hand search bar, you hit enter, then you hit the people button and all the staff comes up. And then you try to figure out, hopefully, who's the hiring manager, if you can figure out by title. And if not the hiring manager, then an executive, like a CEO, COO, or an HR person or a recruiter. Those are the people who are kind of in that hiring realm. If any of those people are second level to you, you're going to have a first level mutual connection. Reach out, right, to that person and say, hey, I recently applied to ABC job at Acme Company. I noticed you're connected to John Smith. He's the hiring manager. Would you consider forwarding my application to him for extra consideration? That lifts your resume out of the pile, right? Okay. So there you go. There's my very long answer. Alki would love to hear any color you'd like to add.
I had to smile with that question. I spent several hours yesterday off and on working on an article for LinkedIn that I didn't post yet. That's a lot of what we talk about all the time, and this stuff is always top of mind anyway, but it's about shifting your job search. And one of the bullet points I literally have in there, I use 90, but 80 is the sweet spot that I always stick to as well. So it's trying to get at least in that 80 percentile range for most jobs. But you covered everything. You covered everything well. And Antonio, as a recruiter who has gotten piles and piles of resumes, one of the first things we do is if we post a job and then we go to look at who's applied for the first time. And let's just say I posted 5 days and I'm like, all right, I posted on Monday. Let me take a look on Thursday or Friday and see what I have. I already know there's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 people. And I also know, to Shira's point, that at least half, I tend to think in my head, depending on the position and where it is in the market, I tend to know in my head that probably 50 to 60% nowhere close. Like
completely unqualified.
nowhere or I'll say 30% is absolutely just somebody who saw a job and applied for it and they work in a total different field. 20 to 30 other percent,
Okay.
they've done a little bit, but they're not going to be elite. And that's a word that I use in my article. So I'm already thinking 50 to 60%. I'm moving over to the left. Some are totally gone. Others I'm sticking over to the left. Then I know I have this pile over to the right. That's people who are 50, 60, 70%, and it starts to go up. But I know in my head that there's probably only 5 to 10%, maybe 15, that I really need to spend my time on. And so even just for starters, and this is for everybody on the call, and some people are, everybody's, why didn't I hear anything back? The least thing they could do is get back to me. Some people have no idea that their resumes didn't even really get looked at. And then some people don't really have an idea that their resume is not getting considered, to Shira's point, because we start looking right away and we know, oh, they don't even belong here. And so while she was talking, I was thinking she's covering all the main bullets. In my head, I'm thinking of an illustration. I'm thinking, my neighbor gave me a box of puzzle pieces, and they're all mixed in and they're all blended. So when I get the box, I open it and I'm like, what is this? I already know most of these don't match. They're from 2 or 3 puzzle boards. I can easily try to match 2 that fit together, but they're not going to be from the same puzzle thing. What employers want, they want 80 to 90%. They want 100% if they can find it. Like Shira said, usually they're not going to find
Or
it.
110.
110.
Yeah.
And we can't deliver. So we're picky. And we're also working on their behalf, but we're pros at what we do, and we're all about matches. They push us they're pickier than we are. So I'll just say, 50%, can you apply? Sure, but your expectations, if you don't meet, like Shira said, if you hold up the job description and you hold up your resume, and you can't just look across and go, yep, draw a line, that matches, I've done that. If you can't do that to 70, 80%, chances are you're not going to get selected. And then you could be 80 or 90%, but the 25th person who applied and they've already looked
Is
at
95%.
So it's when I get this question, the way I'm starting to answer this question more these days is, let's look at how you're spending your time applying.
Right.
You can apply for anything. The question is, how can you be using your time better in your job search? And I would advise you 50%, yeah, feel free, but you could be looking for other jobs, and you should target jobs that you match more if you expect to hear anything back, get an interview, or even possibility for a job offer.
Yeah, and on top of that, we always like to say that looking on job boards should only be 10% of your job search. 10%, that's it. 90% of your job search needs to be networking. It just does. Like, that's how people get jobs. It's people they know, like, and trust. And besides which, over 80% of jobs are hidden from the market, meaning they're not on the job boards. Think of that. 80% of jobs in the market are not on the job boards. Their employers calling their colleagues, getting on listservs. Hey, does anybody know? Blah, blah, blah. Right? I'm hiring. Recruiters looking online, recruiters who, myself, Alki, right? Where we don't even post the job on LinkedIn's job board or Indeed or whatever, because we know we're going to get inundated with a lot of people who aren't qualified. So we're proactive and we headhunt, and we go on LinkedIn, but we use the database of LinkedIn. We go and try to find people proactively, or we'll just, maybe we know colleagues with people we've known in our network or whatever. And we go and we say, hey, everybody, I'm looking for a blah, blah. Like I'm very plugged into the human resources community. So if I happen to have an HR search, I'm a generalist, but let's just say I happen to have an HR search, there's this listserv that I'm a part of that I can post the job and say, hey, HR people, do you know any other HR people for this role? Or whatever it is, and so the extent to which you are networking well and networking within the community that you are, your professional community, those are the people who are more likely to hear about the opportunities that are not right for them, but are right for you. And so I like to break it down. I say lane and community. So your lane is your profession, your community is the industry, mission, or sector. So Antonio, what's your profession?
Software. Business analyst of software.
Business, I'll just say business. Okay, software business analyst. Fine. So that's your lane. It's what you do. Now, you may or may not have a community. A lot of IT people don't necessarily, but let's just say you did. Let's just say you played very heavily in the government contracting space or the financial services space or something like that. If you did, you would focus in on the people who are people in your lane, but also in your community, because those are the people who are hearing the opportunities. But if you don't have a community focus, if you're just a lane person, still start going to groups. I mean, you're welcome to come here, but in addition, find the meetup groups, find the chapters, whatever, that have the business analysts and the software folks and the people who do what you do, because they're regularly hearing about opportunities, again, that are not right for them, but could be right for you. And above all of this, and we say this all the time on this call, it's getting to be a little bit broken record, but employers are risk averse. They just are. You've got your career needs, but they have their business needs. They do. And they are, they're looking for the purple squirrel because they have very specific strategic objectives they need to meet, and they don't want to, take a risk. So they're like, have you been there? Have you done that? Do you have a t-shirt and a side of coleslaw and a bag of potato chips, right? Like they need to know you can do the job. That's their focus. You've got other focuses around compensation and work-life balance and corporate culture and all the wonderful things and important things. And maybe even a career shift. And maybe, but again, if you're career shifting, think, right? Are you mitigating their risk? Are you showcasing the skills that are relevant, right? So this is a little bit of a crash course in what Alki and I are preaching at you, but is this helpful? Is this a long answer to your short question?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay.
By the way, I do want to share something. So every once in a while, we'll bring in like a little anecdote or something. And I want to share something I watched yesterday. It's fascinating. So somebody in my network, actually somebody who is periodically on this call, forwarded me a TikTok video. Okay, so let me tell you what this was. So it was like a 7-minute video of an early career professional, okay, who worked for a tech company. I guess she was in sales. And she had been seeing that her colleagues were being laid off, unfortunately in the tech world, that's happening, right, by the thousands.
Yeah.
But she had just heard that this was happening. And she was invited to a call by an HR person. Actually, not even anybody that she knew. So she knew it was going to happen. She knew she was about to get fired. Okay. So she decided, watch this. So she's watching her Zoom video. Over here, she sets up her phone with her video, knowing she's about to get fired, and she wants to record the whole thing for the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we're seeing, is her experience of getting fired by this company.
Right.
So who gets on? Not her hiring manager, an HR person she's never met, and some other legal person she's never met. And they go through this, standard script. Oh, business, is not doing well, blah, blah. Sorry, we need to transition you, something like that. So she decides to fight for herself. And she launches into this whole thing about, but I don't understand why. And I've only been here 4 months and all my performance reviews have been amazing. And can you tell me specifically why me? You're telling me that there's these budget considerations, right? But why are you firing me? And of course they couldn't answer. And they gave her all the HR, well, we're not going to be able to, satisfy your question. And I mean, this went on and on and on, back and forth and back. And she keeps like hounding, right? And just saying, but why are you firing me? I have had great performance reviews and my boss has said I'm blah, 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 and wonderful, all this stuff. And the point of her saying this was how, the implication of the video was like, oh, how impersonal, right? This process is, and how it's just this sort of corporate machine. She didn't say that, but that was the implication of this video. And so, my colleague, shared this with me in this, like, can you believe that she went through this? And I'm thinking, well, number one, yes, I can. I understand, because especially with larger companies, they do these things across the board. And so they have to be very legal and scripted about how they do this so that it's fair and so that nobody can claim discrimination or anything like that. They're trying to mitigate their risk. They're trying to de-escalate the situation because, of course, if the hiring manager had done this, then of course there would have been this bigger kerfuffle. Like there's all these legal risk mitigation factors that went into how they did it in a sanitized, standardized kind of a way. It feels 100% impersonal to her, very frustrating. But from the legal perspective, HR was trying to, dot their I's and cross their T's. But what I wrote in response to all of this, as I said, what this says to me is somebody who sits on both sides of the hiring aisle. I'm a recruiter and a coach. I talk to both sides. I said, what this says to me is that it's another indication of the tension that is felt between an employee or a job seeker's career needs and an employer's business needs. They often are in tension and often are in conflict. So on the one hand, absolutely, I totally appreciate her frustration. Of course, like, why wouldn't she be frustrated with a situation like that? Here's the flip side that people don't realize. How frustrating is it for an employer who suddenly gets 2 weeks notice from a wonderful employee that they thought was happy, they thought they were keeping them engaged, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, 2 weeks notice and bye-bye. And they're out this incredible talent, and then they have to scramble, and what is the employer going to do? Well, why didn't you imagine the flip side of that TikTok video. Well, what did we do wrong? And why are you leaving it? Of course, employers not going to say that, but that's what they're feeling. They're feeling the same thing. Why just 2 weeks notice? You hid your job search from us, which of course, understandable, right? People do confidential search, but it's totally hidden. And then all of a sudden, boom, this amazing person is gone. Now all the customer relationships are going, all the staff that have to pick up all the slack, they have to go rehire. Suddenly, get it? Both sides are dealing with their needs. But unfortunately, we don't often walk a mile in the other person's shoes, and we need to. So this isn't me saying any one side is better or we should. I'm saying we need to appreciate everybody, respect everybody's needs. What are you looking for? What's going to make you happy? What are they looking for? What are their challenges? How do we listen to each other, communicate with each other, respect each other's professional needs to both in the hiring process as well as in the employment process? I mean, this is a much bigger conversation I'm opening up here, but what I just want to encourage everybody to remember, you got to walk a mile in the other shoes. And I preach this to HR too. I say to HR and employers, respect your candidates, appreciate what their needs are in the recruiting process, in employee engagement. They have all these needs too. They have career motivators, blah, blah, blah. I'm preaching to everybody. Alfie, I'm sure you are too. But does this make sense? I really want everybody to have a balanced perspective that we're dealing with a relationship here, right? It's not one side.
Right.
So anyway, that's just my little opining for the moment. I should blog about this.
Yeah.
You opined all over my article. So one of my sections, so I spell out shift because I'm talking about shifting your job search. So I use all the letters, but the H is something we talk about all the time, and you just opined on it, is heal their hurts. And it's an article talking about making, understanding their side of the table and making your resume, to Antonio's, question, fit what their needs are. And I compare it to, if something abruptly happened, I don't know how you read my article and I haven't published it yet, but I'm talking about, especially if somebody left abruptly, they now have an open wound and the job description is the prescription. And they're not going to take any old medicine.
Right.
They're looking for a specific type of prescription with a specific dosage, which is the requirements and the qualifications and all those things, because of the risk that they can't afford to take. And if somebody did just up and leave, as I put in my article, abruptly, and I don't know how you read that, but yeah, they have open wounds. But what doesn't happen, as Shira said, and it's unfortunate too, is especially from the candidate side, and it's all over LinkedIn. I saw an article yesterday. Somebody posted, how Google laid off some employees, and then somebody posted, a job isn't your family. And they were just talking about, there's no loyalty anymore. Mm-hmm. Some companies probably have a great culture of loyalty, but yeah, it's business. And for us who pay attention to sports a lot, they say that a lot. Like, hey, I played for this team, I was here, and then they up and traded me away. And most of the players, they understand it's a hardcore cutthroat business. They can be up and traded sometimes if their contracts are up. So it's unfortunate, though. We try to preach as much as we can to hiring managers and employers. No, you can't do that. You had them going through all these interviews, and they were so eager for this final interview at 9 a.m. And then you email me at 8:35 a.m. to tell the candidate you have to change the interview at the last minute when they had this great, these great positive thoughts of you, and now you're making me now get on the phone and try to find them and tell them, yeah, I know you woke up at 5 to prepare for this interview, but they're going to push it to next Thursday now. Like, those are the types of things we try to preach on both sides. But yeah, it's business. And so at the end of the day, both sides are risk averse. Candidates are risk averse.
Okay.
Employers are risk averse. And so going back to that question that Antonio asked, you can roll the dice anywhere you want to. But everybody understands, if you're just willy-nilly throwing dice all over the place, it's chance. They may or may not call you. You may strike it rich. Somebody may be like, you know what? I'm feeling generous today. He doesn't match anything, but let me give him a call. And I've done that plenty of times where I find out, oh, so this isn't your current resume. What we're talking about on the phone, you actually do have experience.
Right.
I'm going
I've had that too.
with the hiring
That's
manager
right.
and you get a job.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah, that's why your resume has got to just broadcast exactly how you're skilled, because we're not mind readers, right? We can't see what's not there. If all you have is a document, it's got to absolutely lay it out. And again, that also means you want accomplishment stories, not just job duties. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a sample. I've shared this maybe a few times, but I'm going to bring this up right now. This happens to be the resume template that I use when I am writing resumes for job seekers, right? So I am, again, a career coach, resume writer, right? So I just want to show this to you as a model. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to use this exact model, but the concept of this is very important. You're going to see a lot of substance here, but you're also going to see keyword focus. It's not just that, quick and dirty thing, because recruiters actually need something of substance. So this is what I share with people. This is a real resume, but it's got sanitized information. Okay, this is very clean. It does not, this particular type of style does not use a summary paragraph. It doesn't have a lot of extra words, but it does focus here on whatever the career title is, which needs to be customized. So in this case, you see association, education executive. So association is the community, education is the lane. Not saying you have to have a community, but if you do have one, right, it's important. You see just a little bit about kind of how they show up. And then here are the competencies that are then mapped to accomplishment stories. Now, these are substantive. I'm not saying you have to make them this long. They could be half this length. But the more important piece of it is that you have competencies that are labeling. That's what I was referring to earlier, Antonio, okay?
Mhm.
And all of these competencies get customized, based on the job. So you have a master document, and then you customize it based on the role. And it's very clean and easy on the eye. Okay. Recruiters find this to be very friendly to them, but notice that there is substance here. It's not just a bullet with a job duty or a few bullets. And don't worry about the length as much. A lot of people say, oh, but it needs to be 1 page or it needs to be 2 pages. That's actually from yesteryear. Just so you know, that's that old joke. Hey, the daughter says to her mom, hey, mom, why do we cut the end of the ham off when we go, put it in the pan? She goes, I don't know. Let's ask your grandma. Grandma goes, I don't know. Let's ask great grandma. Great grandma says, well, my pan was too small. Well, back in a day, right? Back in a day when we were getting mail, this is a long time ago. Okay. We were getting envelopes, right? With the card stock, and we were getting faxes and things. We recruiters didn't want a lot of paper. You didn't want us to read a lot of paper because it was just too much paper. So that's why we got to that whole 1-2 page thing. These days, we're just scrolling. So 3 pages is not a big deal. Now, more than that, you can actually. It's not like someone's going to screen you out if you go into a 4th page. But generally speaking, put in there what you need to put in there. Have some substance. We're not going to ding you if your resume is a little long. Don't make it 10 pages unless you're in academia or if you are in higher education. Those 2 areas, that's a CV. That's a very different thing. But for normal private sector jobs, it's okay if you go into 3 pages or a little more, whatever, but just make sure you have the substance. Don't just go for pretty and graphic. Go for content, but more importantly, go for keywords. Okay, keywords here, and then keywords up here. Okay, so I just want to show that. Hopefully that's helpful for folks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I especially I got the insight about networking, how important it is. So that's a valuable piece of information for me.
Good. I'm really glad. Yeah, so, and we wanted to give information for, not just for you, right? For everybody. It's like, okay, this is some good stuff. So thank you for prompting us, Antonio. Those are some really great questions. Glad that we got to opine.
Question.
Yes, Deborah.
Yeah, so good morning. I have a couple of questions for you guys this morning. So my first one is, years ago we would have letters of reference or recommendation, and now that's switched over to LinkedIn recommendation. And I was talking with someone else who's in a job search about, I have this and she has it. We have these stellar recommendations on LinkedIn that we're not ever sure did the influencers or a hiring manager see it. So she said when she went to an interview, she said, I took my LinkedIn recommendations, I printed them, gave it to the people who I was interviewing with. And I kind of thought that's an interesting idea, because when I had a letter of reference when I left a job 10 years ago, I would present it sometimes when I would like apply or do it. So
Sure.
just wanted to bounce this off you guys. Like, I thought, to me, I'm like, great idea, but was curious how you guys see, if you have really strong LinkedIn recommendations, how you can leverage those and get people seeing those.
I frankly have never thought about it. I think that's a really creative idea. I don't see why not. Print it out, free paper, whatever, just show people a couple, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I think that that's fine. Also, you'd want to make sure that the references, or excuse me, the recommendations speak to the person's brand, but also speak to the role. Now, of course, it's a little hard because
Right.
you can't like align the job with the recommendation, except if you have several or more, and by the way, there's no such thing as too many. Like you can have as many as you want. You can have 50 or 100 or 250. It doesn't matter. You can have them. I'd go get them. But what I would do is make sure that if you do share it with an employer, that it includes the kind of skills that the employer is looking for. So I'll give you an example. So a long time ago, I was looking at a candidate's LinkedIn, and it mentioned how detail oriented she was, blah, 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 which I'm sure she was. But I was looking for a strategic thinker. That didn't speak to that. So you just have to be a little careful that it doesn't mess up your brand, that it actually highlights the skills that they're looking for. That's my opinion. Alki, do you have a thought?
Yeah. Some people I've seen with resume applications. Some people, some people include references. Opine, that's a good word for today. I'm not going to opine too much, but I will say that if I'm recruiting for 10 openings or 20 or something like that, or it depends on the day, I could just have time to just, I'm shooting through really quick. I'm looking at this resume, this one. And so there's days when I'm like, reference, we'll get to that later, shorty, we'll get to that when you get to the offer process. I'm not really looking at that today, but some people include it, and some people include recommendations. References, I never really look at, because if it's the first screen, I don't need that yet. I mean, it's good that you have them, but I always put that over to the side. It's not important for the first thing. Plus, are these people even important? Recommendations I've seen, some people have put quotes on their resume. Some people have had recommendation sheets attached to their resume file that they've sent over. I'll say, on the one hand, especially in the beginning, if I'm just doing the first level review and screen, most times, 5 to 10% of the time, I may glance at it. But again, my focus is on, are you qualified? How do you fit? How do you match?
Right.
Because none of that matters if you can't even get in the door. So the first thing is to get you an interview, to get them to say, oh, I'll talk to him. They're not even really interested in recommendations until I give my voucher, because I'm the recruiter who knows what they're looking for. So on the flip side, they can come in handy, to Shira's point. If they're relevant and they're strong, they can come in handy, especially for the people who are higher up. I would say, VPs at that level, they tend to look at them. There's VPs who tend to say, they'll tell me, you know what, Alki, before I make the decision, I know somebody over there. Let me call them. They'll call their VP buddies, their CEO buddies, to get a word on someone.
Right.
But usually it's up the chain. So I would say, if you're sending in a resume and you have strong recommendations, one from like a CEO or a managing director or somebody up top, like they tend to listen to those words, but it needs to be something strong. It doesn't hurt, to Shira's point, to include it. As far as recommendations on LinkedIn, a lot of people never look at those. It just depends on the type of time they have. There are some managers, I'll send it over and they'll be like, yeah, okay, I was looking at their LinkedIn page last night. So they do get looked at, but it's hit or miss. And again, I'll just say if it's strong, and it's people who matter, like if it's just your buddy in the other cubicle next door saying, oh yeah, they were great to work with. They brought me a Pepsi every day. That's not going to really hold weight. It needs to be from, I would say, CEO, somebody who's a leader, somebody who's influential in a company. If you have those, I would include those. Otherwise, to Shira's point, it could actually go the other way. So it's personal choice.
And Alki, it's a great point that you made in terms of when. I know, Deborah, this wasn't your question, but the question of the sub question around, when do recommendations actually matter? So Alki, you were making a very important distinction. They're not going to matter until the employer says, oh, you've checked my main boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's the same equivalent of when you're on Amazon or any other online retailer and you're looking for a product. We do this all the time.
Or
we're
a book.
Looking for
Or I'm sorry, I was going to include this in you go to Barnes and Nobles or wherever. Some of us will grab the book, we'll read it. Some of us grab it, flip it to the back as the first thing we do. Who said anything good about this person? And we check, oh, okay.
Yeah. Or you're looking on Amazon, right? And you're looking for an appliance or a computer or whatever. What do? You're not going to look at recommendations first. First, you're looking at the basic specs. How many megs? How many this? Is it energy efficient? Blah, blah, blah. Does the basic specs meet my needs? If it does, and you've got 5 of them you're comparing, then you go to the recommendations and say which of these is actually better. It's the same process that recruiters use.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful.
One other place that it can come in handy is, and I've seen this happen too. You're in the first interview process, or whenever the employers they're on the fence, or you go through an interview and you realize like, okay, part of the interview went great, the other part, like, oh, they really dug into this and they have questions about what happened there, or could I really do the job? If you go through that process, or if you have things in your background and you feel like I'm not really confident about that, but I do have somebody that I did help and I accomplished something great and they can vouch on my behalf, that's another good place for recommendations as well. To Antonio's first point of, if you feel like, I don't know if I'm quite 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, but I do have somebody that can vouch to say, well, hey, he didn't work in that department, but he did do something very similar, very, very well for us. Recommendations can sometimes come in handy that way too.
And by the way, I'm sorry, I need to make a logistical insert here. Alki, this is to you. I right before our call, an employer that I've been trying to get in touch with for days now said that she would be available to talk to me around 10. So I made you co-host. So if she calls anywhere around there, I'll just go mute. I'll stay on the line, but I'll just go off, off video, off voice. And if you could keep on going, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. All right. So other questions? Keith, anything that, I apologize, Deborah. You have another question?
Yeah, I had a second one, but Keith, go ahead if you had a question.
I was going to change the topic a little bit and move to interviews, specifically interviews that are panel type or group interviews, because the dynamics are significantly different. And recently I've run across a couple that were entirely different. One was a panel of about 6 people. There was one moderator, and the questions were presented to me on a typewritten sheet of paper, and they just went down the list one at a time. And then, the others were more typical, where there's a panel of 4 or 5, and they kind of rotate around and ask their questions. But it seems to be a different dynamic than a one-on-one. And so I'm curious as to any input or thoughts you had on how to handle those.
Alki, you want to start? I'm happy to chime in after you.
Sure. Panel interviews and group interviews are so much fun.
They're fun.
Aren't they? Yeah, stressful.
Woohoo!
Stressful for most people. Yeah, those are tough, and the dynamic is totally different. And there is no one size fits all answer. We try to, well, I know I do. Depends on the situation. I try to tell them, and I'm like, all right, who are you going to have in your panel interview? Well, we got about 19 people. What? 8 people? No, that's too many. So we try to get it down. I do 2, 3, 4 people max, because it's overwhelming for a candidate. And it's not fair sometimes. You could be qualified, out the wazoo, but if it's 4 people who don't understand interview techniques and tactics, if they didn't even read your resume until just before the interview, all of that
If they read it at all.
if they sometimes they're literally reading it during the interview, as you talked about, them handing you a paper while you're there. So it's really hard to prepare, even though both of us do prepare candidates for these things. Staying in the middle lane, some of the things I tell candidates is, number 1, deep breath. 2, all your sit up straights and try to be prepared for every answer that you possibly can, but you are going to be thrown some curveballs, and it could be from neutral to terrible. They go really left and they really go right. And so I tell candidates a lot, read the room is one of my first advices. Read the room. Know that you're going to be asked all kinds of questions, some that you might not have even prepared for, which it's seemingly unfair. But the best that you can do is the best that you can do. And I would say, if it's whoever asks you that question, answer the question that they ask, number 1, and start there. And then know that it's a group where everybody is trying to get their questions answered. So whoever asks a question, you look them in the eye and you turn it into a one-on-one conversation, at least in the beginning, while making eye contact with the others who didn't ask the question, because you're speaking to a group. But I would say, yeah, you start out with 3 or 4 panelists, but whoever asks you the questions,